You're watching Fantasy Studs and Suds, only on Fantasy Now Plus.
All right, well, that threw me off. So welcome to episode 9 of Fantasy Studs and Suds, brought to you by Fantasy Now Plus and the Fins Talk Sports Network. I am the Fantasy Nobody, Jeffrey Crisp, and along with me is my co-host, CJ Pudge LePage. Our segments today will include Fantasy Studs. We conclude our series on sophomore studs with a look at quarterback. Fantasy Leagues, League Arguments. Fantasy Priority, Best Ball Strategies. Our favorite segment, Fantasy Suds, our selections for Beer of the Week. And then we'll conclude with Fantasy Funds, review of the opening weekend of Scott Fish Bowl, and another segment of A or B. How you feeling this afternoon, Pudge?
Well, it is Polish Fest time. And if you have never had the experience of going to a Polish festival, then you got to go. It's a big time event over here in little old mid-Michigan, and it's a good time. All the polkas, all of the friends, all of the beers that I may partake in, or may not, depending on how the night goes. How about you?
Well, it's going to be a weekend that's going to kind of be low key for me. I've been kind of running around the last several weekends, dealing with either donations for Scott Fish Bowl or preparing for our trip last weekend, which we'll discuss in a little while. And this weekend's just going to kind of be just, chilling with my wife and the dogs and just gearing up for next week and the holiday.
Good. It sounds relaxed.
It's well deserved and well needed. So that's what we're going to be doing this weekend. But until then, let's kick off with Fantasy Studs. So after reviewing wide receivers, running backs, and tight ends, respectively, our last 3 episodes, today we conclude our series on sophomore studs with a review of 3 quarterbacks who may be poised for a leap in year 2. Pudge, who is your first QB?
I am going to start off with Mr. Michael Penix Jr., formerly of the Washington Huskies. He is not very experienced, let's say. But we do have somebody that does have experience with the left-handed quarterback over there in Atlanta. Darnell Mooney is experienced with southpaws and how they throw. You don't think that it's a big adjustment, but when they brought in guys like Michael Vick was a left-handed quarterback. Both of those guys are top 10 picks. Michael Vick went 101 overall. But back to Mr. Michael Penix, those guys are both left-handed quarterbacks, and they have a slight learning curve for their wide receivers. Now, last year, Michael Penix Jr. started 3 games replacing Kirk Cousins in a, let's say, a lost year. He does have a pretty darn good cast. He's got Bijan Robinson, Drake London, Kyle Pitts put up 1,000 yards his rookie season, and the aforementioned Darnell Mooney, who has experience with left-handed quarterbacks. We also have Matt Ryan, who's been mentoring him. As eerily as it sounds, they have the same type of pocket presence, which is really good. And then you have Zach Robinson, the pass game coordinator for the LA Rams. He came over, and he was partially responsible for the resurgence of Stafford, who passed for the second most yards in a postseason, and that was in 2021. That was 1,188 yards just in a postseason. He was the wide receivers coach for Nakua, and he led Cooper Kupp to the Triple Crown. He also brought Baker back up to relevance, and then Baker went over to Tampa Bay, also won a Super Bowl in 2021. So there's a lot to like about Michael Penix Jr. coming up this year.
Well, I find it interesting. There's a lot of negative. I don't want to say negative perspectives, but there's not a lot of positivity surrounding Penix that I have been hearing recently. And, he's way down on draft boards, especially for fantasy. If I recall, week 18 last year at the end, I think he had a solid performance. I mean, again, 3 games is not a lot to go on. And it's going to be
small sample size.
Is really, very small. And so this year, obviously, we'll see what he does. But I thought he ended the season very strong. And with that cast, as you mentioned, I don't know how you do not perform unless you're just a bust. And so I have a lot more. I have a lot more riding on Penix. I have him in a lot of my leagues, and so I'm really looking forward to him performing well. But I just don't understand why he has not received the love that that you would have expected someone who ended the season with such a strong performance would have received. But that's just me, and maybe it's just me projecting my desire to have Penix do well for my fantasy leagues. But I just think that there's more for him to do there than others have discussed.
You did take him in Scott Fish, correct?
Yeah, actually I did. He is my QB2 in that league, and we'll talk about that a little bit as well.
Yeah, we got a comment over here from Jamie. Penix, he did have a large target share with 35%, which that's exactly what you're looking for in a wide receiver. It's wheels up, like you said, for Drake London, I believe, even with that small sample size. And then you want me to go on to my next guy over here, JJ McCarthy?
Well, really, I agree that London has a significant opportunity here, especially given how poorly Cousins performed most of the year. I'm also really hoping this is the final shot for Pitts. I mean, this is it. You either put up or shut up, and it's time. And I'm really hoping Penix can find a way to get him involved and get him moving.
Well, there's no more motivation than money, and they did not exercise his 5th-year option, so this is a contract year for him.
Agreed. All right, let's go to the next.
I got JJ McCarthy over here. He didn't play last year, so this is a mulligan year for him. August 14th last year, he underwent a full meniscus repair. He should be ready to go. Lindsey Young of the Minnesota Vikings page, their main page, quoted Kevin Connell. He said, and this is very telling, they have the franchise QB in their locker room, and he will be ready. So if Kevin O'Connell is that motivated to say JJ McCarthy is the future of the Minnesota Vikings, I believe it. O'Connell took Nick Mullins, Nick Mullins. I said it right. He had 5 games in 3 starts, and he had 1,380 yards. That's the same Nick Mullins that was predecessor by Joshua Dobbs after he went down, who also played 5 games, but he had 4 starts and he had 1,122 yards. So after Kirk went down, they also had Justin Jefferson go out and Hawkinson go out and both of those respectively played 10 and 11 games. Now, if you can get Nick Mullins and Josh Dobbs to produce 1,000 yards in 5 games apiece, you have to be able to do something with JJ McCarthy. And then last year, as we know, Sam Darnold, he was a reclamation project. He had over 4,500 yards, and his supporting cast was all there. It was JJ, Addison, Hawkinson, Aaron Jones. Now they've added Jordan Mason to do some probably first and second down work. And I think that is going to be huge because in 2023, they didn't have anybody besides Alexander Madison and Ty Chandler over there in the backfield. And Aaron Jones and Jordan Mason are a huge upgrade there. So I think JJ McCarthy is going to be pretty solid this year.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of upside with McCarthy. Again, I'm a little gun shy. The injury kind of worries me, and I think that we don't have anything to go on, unlike Penix, where at least we had a 3-game sample to see. So I do agree with Jamie in the comments. There is a possibility for McCarthy to be a top 10 quarterback with those weapons. You got JJ, Addison, Hawkinson, and the aforementioned running back core. I mean, I absolutely hate this term, but the sky's the limit for JJ McCarthy. And I think that
it's very cliche.
It is very cliche. And so I agree with Jamie on his comment that he has that potential to be top 10 if all goes well.
I just want to say afternoon, Craig. Good on you for watching the show. And then I've got my third quarterback, which is near and dear to my heart. He played right here in the great state of Michigan. Bazooka Joe Milton, acquired from the Patriots this offseason. He has a lot of raw talent and tremendous upside. Unlike Michael Penix, he's got a lot more running mobility. Dak has had trouble staying on the field. 2024, he missed 9 games with a hamstring tear. He played all 2023 games. 2022, fractured thumb, missed 5 games. Calf strain in 2021, missed the game. And then he had a compound fracture in his ankle, and he dislocated it. And he missed 11 games then. So I think that if Dak Prescott goes down, Joe Milton could take that job, and with his contract being so low, he could take over that job, and not too much different than Drew Brees and Tom Brady. I'm not saying he's Tom Brady, but he could get hurt. They could go far with that cast, and it could be awesome. They upgraded the line in the draft. In 2024, they played, the New England Patriots, they played Buffalo in their last game, right? He had that 85-yard bomb that everybody's still talking about. And in that game, he had over 76% completion. So he can get the job done, albeit a beat up secondary for the Buffalo Bills because they didn't have their starters in. But also a fun stat for him is he's Anquan Bolden's cousin, and Anquan Bolden's the tough dude. And if Bazooka Joe is just as tough, he could produce in a time where Dak Prescott goes down.
Well, I don't have a lot of shares of Dak in my dynasty leagues. I do know if I think I only have one, and then if I could get Joe Milton to handcuff him, I would certainly do that. Someplace, it's kind of difficult to do that in a redraft league where you want your second QB to be someone who's going to be able to step in, and especially with Dak's injury history, you need somebody who's going to be able to, and with bye weeks, etc., you're going to want somebody else other than Joe Milton. But in a dynasty league where you may be carrying 3-4 quarterbacks, I think carrying Joe is certainly something you'd want to try to target, because I agree with you. In the event Dak goes down, Joe could not only fill those shoes, but he may actually help prove us wrong when we discussed our rankings of CeeDee Lamb earlier this year. So I would definitely go after him in a dynasty league. I don't know that I'm doing it in redraft, but dynasty is definitely, if you have Dak, handcuffing Dak with Joe is something that I would definitely want to do. We have some comments.
Also, super flex too. Yeah.
Super flex.
Yeah. Jamie had it. He absolutely can. He's got the tools. The fact that they traded for him, I know it wasn't, the biggest trade, but the fact that they traded for him means they do have a lot of interest in him. And I don't think Dak is very special. He's good when he has protection, but their offensive line is not what it used to be. So that's all I have to say about that.
Hey, and Craig, we have a comment from Craig, but I'm not exactly certain what you're Craig, if you could
Craig, what we got going on here? Retype that in, and we'll address it later.
Yeah, we'll circle back around to it. All right. Well, we can debate the merits of Pudge's perspectives, but I have no argument on any of them. But arguments in leagues, however, are not always so easy to avoid. So gather 12 people for any reason, and it is unlikely everyone will agree. Gather 12 competitive people for a fantasy league, and it is certain there will be disagreements. Disagreements are fine, but when they degrade to verbal arguments, there is a fine line between strong, respectful debate and combative, vociferous verbal altercation, potentially detrimental to the league. Some arguments can get heated and distinguish quickly. Others, however, can get personal and last longer than expected. The first that comes to mind for me was many years ago in a relatively young league. There was a tie in a playoff game back when fractional scoring on platforms wasn't much of a thing. Unfortunately, the league rules failed to address playoff game ties. Both GMs had differing opinions on how the contest should be decided. As commissioner, I ultimately settled on a 7-point tie-breaking system. Now, the GM on the short end of this process, who was a friend, was furious over the outcome and chastised me, and was prepared to rage quit. While the prospect of him leaving the league was bad, the dialogue and accusations that transpired came precariously close to ending a friendship. Fortunately, that didn't happen, and I'm happy we remained friends until his passing. Pudge, you remember this one, right?
Oh, yeah. Two of my closest friends at the time, they almost came to blows, but everything passed, and it was ugly for a while.
Yeah, and again, it was something where the rules didn't provide for a tiebreaker. We had tiebreakers in standings. We had tiebreakers for or what we would do in the case of a regular season contest. Those were just simply ties, but we didn't address tiebreakers in playoffs. And I had to do something. And as will happen with any commissioner, once a commissioner has to make a decision, somebody's going to be unhappy. But it's really, I can understand someone being unhappy, but how far you take it is really something that is problematic. What is a league argument that you recall?
Well, we're going to talk about it a little bit later, but in the auction league that we had going for a few years, I think it's one of the only leagues of yours that's ever actually folded, just because we lost interest in auction. But we'll reference it a little bit later, and I'll elaborate on it.
Yeah, that league was the first time that I had commissioned an auction league. The individuals that were involved were more casual players, and I think the interest in the league just faded quickly. I think if we had some of the GMs we have now involved in some of our leagues in an auction league, I think it would be a different story. But right now, I'm good with the number of leagues I'm doing, and we'll just leave it at that. A more recent argument involved that I remember involved the championship game in 2022. And this has everything to do with the Hamlin game. Now, in other leagues, in most of all my leagues, the GMs in the title game compromised and agreed to a solution. In a couple of those leagues, they even shared the championship. You were involved in one of those shared championships. But there was one league where not only was there no agreement, but there was a very heated exchange that took place in lieu of collaboration. All of it centered on Jamar Chase's stats. And not only were the comments that were DM'd to me very intense, between the two of them, the dialogue was, shall we say, terse. I ultimately had to render a decision, and one was happy, the other one was not. While the vitriol that was spewed toward me was palatable, nonetheless, the impact of this argument left a lasting tension between not only those two GMs, but even myself, because my decision making was questioned.
That it was tough because I could see both sides. I didn't see Jamar Chase getting the 50 points, whatever it was. And I saw that path to victory but I also saw the opposing GM's argument. I didn't think that Jamar Chase was going to do it, but he had done it before. So you can't exactly ignore the fact that he can put up a 50 burger at any given time. It was tough, and I agree with the decision. The game is played out. The other GM ended up losing, and he was validated, I guess you could say. But I think it strained that relationship, and it hasn't been the same as far as those two making trades, talking trash to each other in the league. It's more been very pointed in recent years.
Yeah, that dynamic completely changed. And it was something, I mean, I don't know that they were the best of friends, but they certainly had a relationship. And I think that relationship has cooled significantly because of this. And that's an unfortunate aspect in fantasy football or in anything that's competitive when friends get together and there's any kind of controversy or anything, that impacts those who are competitive. It can have an impact on friendships, and most can get over it. They separate their friendship from the rest of this, but sometimes that line gets blurred and friendships do end. We had a comment
That's
from
where
Jamie.
league rules come in.
Yeah, I agree. Had a comment from Jamie. I think we did this in a couple of the leagues where we actually took the season average. There was a lot of conversation, and I think that was the one thing that I really enjoyed about most of the leagues. There was a lot of dialogue, a lot of back and forth talking about the best way to handle that. And I think a good commissioner will always listen to everybody's perspective and then kind of use different methods to pull that together. And I think that's what we did in most of the leagues. It was really collaborative in all of them. And like I said, there wasn't a GM that was unhappy, with the exception of that one league and those two GMs. So I do agree with that.
I mean, I was actually part of one of those championships. I was more than happy to share and ultimately remember that a player initially died on the field. I mean, because he did. Damar Hamlin died on the field. And with the quick work of the medical responders and the team medical staffs, they brought him back, and now he's out there still making plays. And I thought that was more important to remember why we had that championship. So Damar Hamlin will always be remembered by me, at least by that. If you don't remember who or what or why, because championships get blurred together. Now, if you look at that shared championship, and everybody remembers that's the Damar Hamlin, and I wanted to make sure that his legacy as a player that overcame all that wasn't forgotten.
Well, I like the fact that with the shared championship, that once I win this year, I'll actually be one half of a championship ahead of you. So that's good.
Well, you have to win first, sir.
That's foregone conclusion.
Good luck.
So more than a decade back, during an auction draft with a 2-minute clock, a GM new to auction and the ESPN platform meant to enter a bid for $11 for Jimmy Graham. Instead, a bid of $110 was accidentally entered. As many GMs are prone to do during a fast auction draft, a $1 bid increase was immediately entered. There was an immediate protest, and I paused the action. After discussing the $110 bid with the new GM, it was evident it was an error. I was able to easily replicate the error, so I reset the bid to $11. The GM who had bid $111, however, was and still is convinced the $110 bid was intentional. What followed were some heated accusations, an auction newbie GM that was going to quit, and even a commissioner that started to lose his cool. Now, I'm the commissioner that started to lose my cool. The GM who had the $111 bid is right there. So Go ahead. Let's hear your side of this.
So I am competitive. I didn't know if you knew that or not. I don't know if you could tell. And I don't believe in coincidence. I'm a pessimistic by nature. Outlook definitely reared its ugly head and still does sometimes. It was what you would say a trick play, and it was used by some GMs in high stakes leagues. It is my knowledge of this person as being in a casino and worked there. So he is very familiar with high stakes. So that is why I, to this day, look at my laptop and I see the 1-1 is nowhere near the 0. At that time, I know a lot of people have home computers that many years ago, but my laptop told me that that was not a mistake. It was intentional. He got caught and didn't want to be embarrassed. I love him, and we have this conversation all the time, but I to this day, I don't believe that was an accident. I believe he got caught and he didn't want to be embarrassed by new friends.
I just don't know what keyboard you're looking at, because every keyboard I have that I've ever seen, the 0 is right underneath the 1. And if your finger slips before you hit, I don't know. I don't know what keyboard you have, but it's 1 with a 0 underneath it with the enter key over here. I was able to easily, the way he explained it, I was able to easily do it and could easily understand how he did it. So you and I know you disagreed with him, and you and I will always disagree on this one. I think it was an honest mistake, and you do not. You think it was strategy. In the end, it all worked out. Nobody, no friendships got lost over it, but I'll agree with you that the top row of a keyboard, the 0 is way on the other side of the 1. But with most keyboards, especially if you had a home PC and you weren't on a laptop that had a number pad, the 0 is under the 1. Okay, we're just going to move on from that. But this is an incident that is always in the back of my mind and is revisited to this day, as you've stated. Incidents like those just described, all of these, are reasons that league rules need to be as comprehensive as possible. Now, given that the league bylaws cannot possibly cover every contingency, the league must not only empower the commissioner to make final determinations in the best interest of the league, but must respect and abide by those decisions. You don't have to agree with them, but you have to abide by them and avoid the confrontations that we've seen in some of our other leagues. It's just something that you can't expect to have everything in your rules. You're not going to have an Oxford Dictionary size rule book, but that's where you have to have rules that empower the commissioner. You have to give him or her the full faith to run your league appropriately and then abide by those decisions. Now, rules and commissioner empowerment may not avoid every argument, but it is amazing how pointing to league rules agreed upon by all GMs will de-escalate most situations. And that has been my experience. Pudge, I know that's been your experience as well. Now, solid league rules offer the best outcomes for dispute resolution. What strategies offer the best outcomes for best ball leagues? Now, best ball is either a loved or hated format for fantasy football enthusiasts. Traditionalists and those who value the art of navigating roster management and lineup decisions throughout the season to showcase their expertise are not proponents of best ball. Those with whom I have spoken are adamant the draft is only one and perhaps the easiest component of fantasy football. They will contend the unknowledgeable, unskilled, and unprepared are able to champion a fantasy football draft only to have their deficiencies magnified during the season. Now, factions of those who find best ball inferior may still appreciate the format and are willing to participate in best ball for myriad reasons. There is, however, an entire segment of the fantasy football populace that embraces the set it and forget it mentality of the format. Numerous players are exhilarated by the draft process, with many asserting the draft itself is the most exciting facet of fantasy football. A few best ballers I personally know say they love best ball to employ different drafting strategies to see how things unfold, much like a mock draft, but with the potential that GMs are more involved when something is on the line. Now, best ball, in my opinion, has been catapulted to huge success by the DFS and tournament-style best ball leagues found on numerous sites. We don't have to go through all of those, but sites like Underdog offer a wide array of tournaments to fit varied bankrolls. And for those pursuing big paydays, some of those prize pools are significant. Regardless how you feel about best ball, the format is here to stay. Pudge, do you play best ball, and how do you feel about the format?
I love the format, and when I've played, it's been okay. It's been a mixed bag. I have liked a lot of players, Will Fuller III, Tyreek, and then most recently in the last couple of years, Rashid Shaheed, with those big explosive games, and then they return to nothingness and or they're hurt the next week. Those are some fun guys that I like to dabble with that I normally wouldn't. Now Tyreek is a different breed. He was a perennial top 10 guy, but the other two, I believe that they were very, very awesome, along with Deshaun Jackson type of stuff.
So for me, best ball, when it first really started, being introduced, I was an opponent. I didn't like it. I think it was just because it was different, and I like to manage the leagues throughout the entire thing, but I've embraced it more over the years and have, I like it for, when you just want to throw a few bucks on a league, do run a fun draft with people, or even online. It's something that can be interesting. I like the best ball concept where you set it, forget it. I'm seeing a lot of these best ball leagues now where they do have waiver wire and they do allow you to make transactions. That for me kind of defeats the purpose of best ball. I get the fascination with it. Don't get me wrong. I understand why people like it. For me personally, if I'm going to do best ball, I want to do the draft and then I want to forget all about it. Part of the reason is exactly what Jamie just said. If you have in our chat is if you have, numerous best ball leagues and you still have to manage the waiver wire and all those, that is a very time consuming prospect. And that's something I just simply personally would not want to do. So the best ball leagues that I'm in, the mass majority of them, there are no waiver wires. It's a draft and then you're concluded. I do know that the Super League that Fantasy Now Plus is conducting, this is our third year, is a best ball league that does have waiver wire transactions. I failed to recognize that last year. And as I had players going down, I wasn't making the requisite transactions to replace them. So it's something that, there's a lot of different ways you can structure a league. And none of them are bad. It's just for me personally, I'd rather, if I'm going to do best ball, I wanted to set it and forget it altogether. So now there are several strategies for best ball drafts. Our own Tim Holstad has many articles on best ball that can be found on our website at fantasynowplus.com. Tim, along with Fantasy Now Plus contributor Ethan Saver, just published your best ball rankings on Wednesday. Go to fantasynowplus.com for these featured rankings. Now, I am far from a best ball expert. Well, we have established I'm far from a fantasy football expert, period. But when I do play best ball, I really have four things I look for. Number one is stacking, identifying high stat quarterbacks and wide receivers or running backs and tight ends that can spin the point meter any particular game. One example, of many that are out there is Burrow and Chase. Pudge, what are some of the stacks that you like?
My favorite of the past couple of years were Lamar and Mark Andrews. I really liked those guys up until last year. They kind of tapered off. And I think a high reward this year will be Garrett Wilson and Justin Fields. Also, a not so expensive stack will be Justin Herbert and Ladd McConkey. I love those inexpensive stacks that you can get in the middle of the draft. You don't have to spend high picks on either of those. You have to spend a higher pick on Ladd McConkey and Garrett Wilson, but not so much on Justin Fields or Herbert.
See, and a lot of the players you just discussed are players that are going to be in starting lineups no matter what, whether or not you're stacking them in a best ball league or whether or not you're starting them in a redraft or dynasty league. The next set of players are players that oftentimes get left on benches. They don't often get started unless there's an injury or there's a lineup need for them. And those are the players that have high upside or high ceiling. These are players who may be too volatile for your lineups in roster management leagues, but whose game-to-game home run potential is gold, is pure gold in best ball. Now, these guys will frustrate you in traditional leagues, and that's why they remain on benches, or they may remain on waiver wires, but they are adored in best ball. You have some examples there?
I love aforementioned Deshaun Jackson. But he was always hurt. Will Fuller, the same thing. Those guys, they're just so boom or bust. Other than that, I don't have much more experience on that kind of stuff.
Well, if you flash up Jamie's comment, I agree with him completely. Those are two players that they really are very volatile. You may get nothing out of them, but when they hit that home run, it's exceptional in best ball. You're not going to have him. You may not have him in your starting lineup. You may in traditional roster management leagues. And then when they sit on your bench and they go off, then, you get frustrated that they were left sitting there. And it's kind of like poker when you play a hand properly, but you just folded 6 deuce. You muck that, and then the board comes 6 deuce deuce, and you're enraged that you didn't play that hand. Well, you should never have been playing that hand anyway. And so you did the right thing. You just happened to hit it that one time. Same thing with some of these players in fantasy football. When you have them in your lineup, you have them on your bench and then they go off. You sometimes question why you didn't have them in your lineup, but it was the right move to make all along. If they were supposed to be on your bench because they're that volatile, then you made the right move. In best ball, you don't have to worry about that. The player goes off, he is in your lineup for that week. So that is a huge advantage with best ball, and those players that have high upside, high ceiling, but are otherwise way too volatile. So thank you, Jamie. I think that's a good one.
Yeah, Jaden Reed too, Jamie. And we will get to your question, Craig, up there about Bo Nix in his second year. I didn't include him in those guys because he had that breakout season. It was more for guys you're looking to acquire. But I'll talk about Bo Nix right after we get done with our studs.
So another thing to look for is injury history. It is impossible to project injuries, but players with recent and or consistent injury histories may be selections to avoid, even in a best ball league. I have lived the best ball nightmare of drafting way too many players with higher injury risk. And then I have nobody who's I have very few players that can actually be used in best ball. Now that's a different story. And that's another advantage of having a best ball league with waivers. If you start having these players get injured, then you can pick somebody else up to replace them. In the ones I play, in the ones where I've drafted players with high injury risk, that wasn't an option. And then at that point, my season was over and it was something I didn't care about any longer. So, I mean, how do you look at injuries when you're playing best ball?
I don't. I really don't. I just want the guys that I know they can have those explosive weeks. If injury happens, it happens. But I'm going to win. I'm not going there for second or third place. I don't want to get to the playoffs. I want to win the playoffs. And if those guys are going to be healthy all year long, they give you the best option. It's a Chris Olave type deal, right? He could be great this year, or he could be out for the rest of his career. But I'd still take him in best ball. Absolutely.
So, given the NFL's penchant in past years of scheduling bye weeks late into the season, there's nothing worse than having a contending team that suddenly fails because a large portion of your roster is on a bye week. Now, there's no waiver wire to save you. Well, in most best ball leagues, one of the ones when you talk about Fantasy Cares eliminators, where it's not only a best ball, it's an eliminator. You get to that last week, and suddenly half your roster is on bye week. It could be catastrophic. Now, again, bye weeks, the eliminator, that's not a good example because the eliminator actually goes to the last week of the season, as a lot of eliminators do, but some of them actually go through only a certain number of weeks, and it can cause problems. You have a strong team, but that bye week bites you in the butt, and you're eliminated when you have probably a better roster than other teams. I've seen that happen before. Do you look at bye weeks?
Again, no. I usually look at my stacks because I know those will have the same bye weeks, obviously. But other than that, if I have a week that I just have to sacrifice and take one for the team to have the best team possible the rest of the weeks, I'm okay with it.
Okay. Jamie, agree. Like I said, that's one of the biggest things, looking for ceiling, whether volatile or not. If you have those who are going to hit home runs week to week, those are the players to get. And if you hit them all at the same time, that's great. But I try to avoid volatile players in roster management leagues. I look for stability, but in this particular case, I agree. Yes. Exactly. That's the point I was trying to make. If you, again, I don't look, it's weird because in roster management leagues, I don't really look at bye weeks that often. One, if I'm of the frame of mind, even if I have most of my roster on bye and you have a league that allows you to start bye week players, whether declared or not, then I'll take that loss. I'll take the hit that week and I'll move on, knowing that, my team is going to be strong in all the other weeks. Or if I have to, I can make the necessary waiver wire adjustments or transactions to make adjustments to my roster. In best ball, especially in an eliminator, you don't have that option. So I completely agree with you, Cat for Life.
Yeah. Right. And there are some where you can't trade. Cat for Life. Got another one here. You do have to be ahead of the game. That's why it is nice to look a couple of weeks in advance, see where your roster is going to be soft, and if you do have that advantage, you can trade one of those guys. If you didn't plan for it during the draft and you have a good record going in, absolutely you can trade one of those guys and make it count.
Agreed. So I'm certain there's a lot of other strategies that are out there that are, especially those who are in the high stakes tournaments. For me, I just don't get much deeper than that. But I don't, like I said, I don't play best ball as a revenue generating. As we've talked before, I don't do any fantasy for revenue generation. Otherwise, I would not be eating at night. But but I mean, for me, it's I agree. There's probably a lot of different strategies out there. For me, that's about it. Are you looking for a best ball league that also benefits charity? Register for Fantasy Now Plus's Super League 3 at FantasyNowPlus.com. At the top, select Super League, get registered. I think Justin and our team are looking to take registrations through July 12. I may have that date wrong, so don't hesitate. Go out there right now and get into the Fantasy Now Plus's Super League 3. Divisions are continuing to form. So best ball style.
We're at 7 divisions now, looking to make 8. So that's where we stand.
I thought we were at 8, but maybe I'll believe you over myself. So, but get over there right now, FantasyNowPlus.com, Super League, register today. So the best ball style may be a love-hate relationship for fantasy football enthusiasts. For Pudge and I, the best style is any style of suds.
Absolutely.
Now, we love our beer, but we drink responsibly. And if you are out always have a plan for safety before you drink. Pudge, what beer am I not going to like that you are enjoying today?
Well, it's 6.5% alcohol. It is a hard cider. And it is a microbrew beer from Blake's. It is Watermelon Heat Wave. It's watermelon and chili. And I really like their mango habanero El Chavo. So I got to try this, right?
And this is another hard cider from Blake's.
Yes, sir. I don't know how this is going to go. This is watermelon and chili.
That does not sound appetizing whatsoever.
It's not.
Okay.
Oh, I wish it was a natter day.
Well, for me, I'm going a little darker. You know, I love my stouts. Now, this one is from a brewery that is, they're well distributed across the country. I don't know which states they do and do not distribute, but this is from Boulevard Brewing out of Kansas City, Missouri. This is an espresso martini stout. And my green screen is wreaking havoc with that bottle. But it's a limited release 2025 vintage. It comes in at 12.0% ABV. And well, that's all I got to say about that. I'm going to look at this, taste it. Cheers.
Well, Jeff's doing that. I do love Bo Nix. Bo Nix has Cortland Sutton coming in for another big year. I know he's another year older, but he's a trusted, reliable target. They brought in running back. I don't know if you know him or not. His name's J.K. Dobbins. He crushed every R.J. Harvey Truthers draft boards lately. For those guys, I don't think it's going to matter much, but I do think it is going to matter for Bo Nix. With his offensive-minded coach and Sean Payton, he's primed for a huge year, and he has that rushing floor that you're always looking for with a quarterback in the mid to late rounds. So I do love Bo Nix. Thanks for that question. I do think Mims will step it up a little bit. He's a gadget player, but with the addition of Evan Ingram out there, it'll free him up a little bit. Evan Ingram will take those intermediate routes, and Mims might be able to get loose a little bit longer for a couple more explosive games for best ball.
I think it's really funny how Nix has been ignored when we're talking about scrambling or running quarterbacks, how nobody, I shouldn't say nobody, in conversations I have, Nix seems to be ignored in that category. And I think he proved last year that he can scramble. He can do the design run plays. He picks up those first downs. And I think he is going to do the same again this year. So I'm really looking forward to Nix. You and I have talked about Nix a lot. I wanted Nix in the Scott Fish Bowl, and I messed that one up and didn't get him. But I think he's going to have a phenomenal year. And I have him in a few leagues, and I would target him. I think the most attractive thing about Nix is he's falling 1, 2, 3 rounds later in redraft leagues, and even in some of your dynasty startups, he's not going early. The big scrambling quarterbacks, running quarterbacks are going much earlier. So you can jump on your favorite wide receivers and running backs and hold off and get Nix later. Just don't hold off as long as I did.
Otherwise, you won't get him.
There's that. So this past weekend in Cincinnati, Pudge and I had several drafts of delicious suds, but we were focused on drafting studs during the Scott Fish Bowl 15 Cincinnati live draft. This past weekend, Scott Fish Bowl 15 kicked off with 3 lives. Saturday featured lives in Las Vegas and NorCal, while Sunday was the 10 division Cincy live. Pudge and I, along with Fantasy Now Plus's Justin Barley and Jacob Mummer, drafted in the Indiana Fever division. As with all live divisions, we conducted the first 10 rounds live. The remaining draft is a slow draft. I think we just rounded the turn, and we're now in the 21st round. Is that correct? Round 21?
Yes, sir.
And I'm not even sure. I may even be on the clock right now. Don't know.
You're
Pudge,
not.
you were in the – I'm not. Okay. Pudge, you were in the 7th spot. Tell us about your draft.
I loved my draft until I realized, for some odd reason, that every carry is worth 0.5. So I don't know why I didn't take running backs. I went all wide receiver heavy. My biggest, I guess, surprise was Josh Allen going at 107. With his rushing upside, I was kind of dumbfounded because he's going to score more points normally than all of the wide receivers that went before him. Now, I do like the fact that Jahmyr Gibbs and Bijan went 2 and 3, but him falling to 107 was almost criminal. And I think that's my favorite pick. And I ended up with J.K. Dobbins in the 9th, I believe. And that was another solid steal for me. I believe in J.K. I don't know if he's going to be a workhorse, but that might be good for him. He might be able to keep that backfield throughout the course of the year. I know they spent a higher pick on RJ Harvey, but he has a good offensive-minded coach, as we mentioned, with Bo Nix at the helm. And I went pretty wide receiver heavy with Amon-Ra St. Brown. I got Jerry Jeudy in the middle to late rounds. I was pretty happy with those guys.
Well, I was in the 10th position, and I did not go into this with any particular strategy other than I was not going to deviate from my rankings. I wouldn't call it BPA per my rankings, but given all the positions are flex, I was not willing to skip players other than QB. And so it was really amazing how running backs really filled a lot of those top positions once you extrapolated projected stats with the scoring system, at least from my rankings. And I kind of went along that same line where I think, 1, 2, 5 of my first 6 picks were running backs. What was most interesting was Saquon Barkley falling to me at 10. There was this is just going to prove right away what we said last week, is that mocks mean nothing, because this wasn't even close to a single mock that I ran for Scott Fishbowl. I think one of the surprises I saw, it was weird because the 4 divisions that we had, or 5 divisions that we had in our section of the Foaling Warehouse in Cincinnati, Jamar Chase was the number 1 pick in all of them. And I don't think that was any surprise whatsoever. I think the first surprise for me was seeing Jaden Daniels go 4. I thought he would slide a little bit, and actually I was kind of hoping he would slide to me. But Jaden Daniels went 4. Josh Allen going to you at 7. Him sliding, I would have thought Allen would have went before Daniels, but that was kind of just the way that, like you said, that's kind of the way that rolled. I know that there were a couple different players. I'm not going to name out names. One of them, we had 6 wide receivers in the first 6 rounds. Interesting strategy. It was weird because a lot of players, I think, a lot of the drafters, they came in and they had a position in mind. And I think whether it was just the way that it fell, or if they were really targeting those positions, it was quite clear. You had those who were going running back heavy the way that I did. You had others that were going wide receiver. And then you had others, our own Justin Barley, who just thought he was going to get every tight end he possibly could. I think he's got, just looking at this, he's got 5, 6, he's got 8 tight ends in the first 20 rounds. So,
Yeah.
in fact, I think he even chastised everybody in the league chat for drafting tight ends and taking them away from him. Well, I think eight's a pretty good number if that's the position that you wanted. But I think for me, Saquon Barkley falling to 10 was a shock. I liked getting Aaron Jones in the 6th round. I was able to get, I kind of waited on I did wait on quarterback, saw some of the big names, but Caleb Williams was still sitting there in the 7th round, and I finally pulled the trigger on him then. And me as a Lions fan, I'm not a big Bears fan, but this is fantasy, not NFL fandom. And I truly think that the Bears are going to be much better offensively, and I think Caleb Williams is going to be part of that. And whether or not you believe in Ben Johnson or you don't believe in Ben Johnson, I just think that Caleb is going to have a much better season than what we saw. And I think he's, I like getting him in the 7th round there. Then we got into the deeper rounds. I think I also followed up with Penix and then Geno Smith in a 1 QB, or excuse me, in a 2 QB league, 2 super flex positions. 3 quarterbacks may be a lot. So I decided to go for 4 and really make it insane by taking Shuck in round 19. And that's only because in these later rounds, there's a lot of garbage, but that's kind of where I stood there. I'm kind of happy.
High upside, but right?
Yeah, that's what I'm looking for. And if I get one of these guys going down or benched, then then I have him there. But that's kind of where I'm at with that. Let's see. We got some comments here. Let's see. I did the Jamie. I did live going for 2. Were you in Cincy or were you? I didn't get the chance to see the podcast. So were you in Cincy or were you? If you were in Cincy, and I didn't get a chance to say hello. I apologize, but I'll have to go back and watch that podcast. I know Justin was on there for a spell, so I'll have to take a look at that. Let's see. Did you get any of that food? That one dude. It's interesting that you say that. I was not feeling well during the draft. Now, part of that may have been because of the delicious suds that I enjoyed the day before, starting at about noon. And, Uber and Lyft can be bad things when, because when you don't have to worry about driving, you tend to drink a little bit. But I wasn't feeling so well. So I shied away from the food, but instead got this Jamar Chase jersey. Here you go, Justin. How do you like that one? I was looking for that. I wanted that, and I got it. So, so I didn't get a chance to have the food. I know, Pudge, you had some of the food there, and that was a unique thing, having the homemade food and the grilled food, and that was a pretty exceptional concept that John Bosch et al. Put together. How did you feel about the food?
The food was really good. I had the nachos. I had a bunch of the side dishes and stuff like that. The ribs were really good. The wings were super spicy. I like that. They had a whole thing that John made as far as cookies and stuff like that. They were really good. I didn't know John could cook like that, but kudos to Mr. Bosch.
John makes an incredible dip. I don't remember I just know it's good. I don't even know what it is. He's got this dip that is incredible. It's probably one of the best dips I've ever had. And I know he had it there and I know he ran out, but like I said, I wasn't feeling well. Didn't want to risk it when I wanted to sit there and make sure that I was winning my Jamar Chase jersey and drafting my running back. So, but thank you, Jamie, for that. And, but anyway, this weekend, 10 Lives will conduct their drafts, beginning with the Atlanta, Buffalo, Barcelona, and Monterey drafts on Saturday, followed by Chicago, Cleveland, Dallas, Fayetteville, Madison, and Phoenix, all on Sunday. Another exciting weekend of Scott Fish Bowl live drafts will be kicking off tomorrow. So speaking of exciting, Pudge, are you excited by this week's installment of A or B?
We'll see. To be continued. We will see. I mean, maybe not, but I hope so.
Well, I've yet to get to the provocative or controversial ones that one day will get me in trouble. But for now, we'll just go with what I have. And so, hey, it's time now for A or B. I'll present two options, and Pudge and I will decide for each of us which option we'd prefer. So let's get started. The first one, A, keep your Scott Fishbowl roster, or B, start over from any other draft position, and if so, which one?
I will keep my roster. I really like my roster. I like where a lot of the guys landed with the third round reversal. Being at pick 7 gave me the luxury of not fishing for players so much or reaching for players because you have to wait 24 picks to the turn. So I like my draft there.
Yeah, I don't think I'm switching either. I drafted from the 10 position last year, and that was a debacle. I was out of it by week 4 or 5. I don't know when. I like the fact that with the 0.5 points per attempt, I like the stable of running backs that I have. So I don't think I'd want to move off this. Could I have made some better picks? Maybe, but overall, I like my roster, so I'll stick with it. Okay. In best ball format, would you rather have A, Zay Flowers and Chris Olave, or B, Calvin Ridley and Jerry Jeudy?
Oof. I'm going to go with Calvin Ridley and Jerry Jeudy. Calvin Ridley has this stigma, but he's really, really good. I know he's older, and he had some off-the-field issues going over in Atlanta. But Jerry Jeudy last year bust on the scene, and he did what everybody thought he was going to do over in Denver. And I really think that continues this year, no matter who the quarterback is. I don't think they could be worse than Deshaun Watson to start the year last year.
I think originally when I put this question together, I was going to go A, Zay Flowers and Chris Olave, but I'm going to go Calvin Ridley and Jerry Jeudy just like you, because I think there's so much upside. And again, in best ball format, you're going to have down games for Ridley, you're going to have down games for Jeudy, but I think overall they present the highest ceiling. Chris Olave is just too much of a question mark. We don't know what's going to happen when he comes back this year. And Zay Flowers, as strong as he started, I mean, Rashad Bateman's still there. And again, we talked earlier, especially with Jamie's comment about Rashad Bateman. He's an excellent best ball wide receiver. I know that in the rankings, Zay Flower is higher than all the other three. Overall, I'll take Ridley and Jeudy, and I think that I'll be happier for it. Okay, next one. A, Superflex, or B, tight end premium?
Superflex. I wasn't keen on Superflex to start, but I like it now. And tight ends are tight ends. They're always going to be, man, it's just tough.
Before I answer that, I do want to quid pro quo said Olave Zay for him, better matchups for the year. I didn't look that deep in the matchup, so you may be absolutely correct on that one. In best ball, I tend, like I said, we talked earlier about the fact that I tend to only look at a few different things. I don't go that deep into it. So Olave and Zay may have the better schedules. For me, I think it really comes down to again, going back on that, Olave he worries me at this point. I need to see something from him before I'm ready to pull the trigger on that. For me on this third A or B, the Superflex or tight end premium, I was like you, very much opposed to Superflex, predominantly because you'd have GMs who would just hoard the quarterbacks. And, when you have 32 starters and you're in a 12 team, it gets even worse if you're in a 14 team. It becomes difficult to have backups. And then if you have to hit the waiver wire, it really you don't really have many options, but you do get the opportunity to play other players. I guess a lot of it really had to do, for me, it had to do with the scoring. If it was a really heavy quarterback scoring league, or with, as far as scoring rules, then it would really bother me. Some of the super flex leagues that are out there that have, more traditional 4 points per touchdown, the point 0.4 per yard on those are ones where I'm not as opposed to a super flex, because I can then put somebody else in the flex position who may be able to pull the points. But I'm going to say tight end premium. I really like the tight end premium leagues. Never played them much. I really like the fact that it allows, especially if the tight end premium is for receptions or first downs, I think that helps elevate some tight ends that wouldn't otherwise be competitive against other positions. And again, one thing you do for one tight end is going to help the other tight ends. But I think there are ways that you can change the scoring for tight end premium and make it so that some of these lesser tight ends now have a value on your roster and in your starting lineup. So I'm going to go tight end premium on that one.
We differ once.
And it's not often you and I differ, but we differ when it comes to beer. That one we'll never agree on, but that's because you're you. And then our last one, your movie theater go-to: A, popcorn, or B, candy?
Oh, popcorn. And now they have, so now they have this new thing. Before, I guess we were getting synthetic buttered popcorn at the movie theaters. Now they offer you real butter. So now you can really have real butter when you thought you were getting real butter the whole time before. But I love popcorn at the movie theater. You can't get it anywhere else. Candy, you can get at the store.
Well, fresh popped popcorn with salt and butter. I mean, you can't beat that. Now, for me, I'd like to say A or B, but that's not the way our game works. I'll go with A, popcorn. But what I really like to do at a movie theater is take that hot salted popcorn and then mix in some Reese's Pieces. And that salty, that sweet and salty is just a great combination. I don't do it anywhere else, but at the movie theater. And that is something, but if I had to choose between the two, I'm going popcorn. But in the real world, I'm mixing both of those together.
Classic.
All right, Pudge, where do we find you?
You can find me at FFPudge _ fantasynowplus.com on Blue Sky. And then I'm FF _ LePudge over on X. So you can check me out over there.
And Jamie, Sour Patch Kids is another great one. You can find me at FFCommish _ YIS on X. Maybe I already said on X. And I'm at and Blue Sky at ffcommishYIS.fantasynowplus.com. I want to thank everyone in the crowd, Jamie, Quid Pro Quo, Cap for Life, and Craig for joining us. We had Disbanded Brotherhood in there as well. And anyone else who's watching the show afterwards or has not commented, for listening and tuning in. Our next episode will be Friday, July 4th. Yes, that's Independence Day. We will be here at 3 p.m. Eastern and noon Pacific. We want you to catch up on episodes of Fantasy Studs and Suds and your other favorite Fantasy Now Plus shows here on YouTube, YouTube Music, Apple Music, and Spotify. Follow Fantasy Now Plus on Discord, TikTok, Blue Sky, and subscribe to this channel here on YouTube. Until next time, for Pudge LePage, I am the Fantasy Nobody, Jeffrey Crisp. Be good, be kind, be responsible. Cheers.
See ya.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. We'll be back next week for more ways to win your league.